Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you my process for mixing up my compost pile. So let's go. Last fall, I built two big compost piles, one over here and one behind me over here. And it was very simple. I used free wood pallets to build this pile over here. And I like it because it just holds the pile in place. And then for this pile here, I used just some sort of fencing as well as some posts to hold this pile in place. And in case you're wondering what is in this pile, there is a mix of things. There are grass clippings from this season. There are shredded leaves from last fall. I also have kitchen scraps from last fall through the winter I was adding to this pile, as well as this spring, lots of kitchen scraps. And then I also added a ton of horse manure, which you can usually get for free. You just want to make sure wherever you're getting your horse manure that they haven't used any sort of pesticides or chemicals or anything like that. And the same applies with your grass clippings. You just want to make sure that your grass clippings don't have any pesticides or chemicals that were on it. Another thing that's in this pile is shredded paper. Many times we order online packages, let's say from Amazon or Sam's Club, and it might have paper that's in there. I love to use that paper, just put it through my shredder and shred it up into small pieces. So lots of shredded paper that's in here as well. Both of these piles have just been sitting here. I have not mixed them at all. So I know I need to get them heated back up. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to be using a pitchfork and I'm going to be taking layers at a time out of this pile. But while I'm taking layers out, I'm going to be adding some water because water is very important to be in your pile. You don't want your pile to be too wet, but you also don't want it to be too dry. I'm going to be adding some more shredded paper that I've collected. I'm also going to be using fine wood shavings that I got from a local sawmill, and it's just shavings from natural trees. They're not treated lumber. So the shavings are perfectly fine, they're safe. And then I also have a lot of kitchen scraps in that bucket. And when it comes to the wood shavings, I have 14 buckets of the wood shavings that I'm going to be adding in here. When it comes to the mixture, there is a mixture of browns and there's a mixture of greens. And, some people talk about ratios. Personally, I don't get hung up on ratios. I can tell if my pile is warming up to a nice warm temperature of, like, let's say 130, 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the goal that I'm going for. And if I'm finding that the pile is not warming up enough, maybe I need to mix it more. Maybe I need to add some more water. Maybe I need to add some more browns. It really just depends on the consistency of the pile. Okay, so let's go ahead and start mixing up the pile. And all I'm doing is I'm taking the pile, and when I'm taking the pile, I'm just trying to loosen up whatever's in here because it definitely has matted down over time. And that's the key, is you definitely want to do that. Whenever you're mixing up a pile, you don't want it to have huge mats in it. So I'm just using my pitchfork, and you can see I'm just shaking everything around. That adds oxygen into the pile, and that is very, very important. And what I'm noticing is down in the bottom as I'm digging, the brown leaves have definitely broken up into smaller pieces, which is really nice. So now I can add a little bit of greens if I want to. And that's the key, is you want to keep layering your browns with your greens. And speaking of browns, if you like coffee like I do, you can use coffee grounds, but just keep in mind, even though coffee grounds are a brown color, they're actually considered a green. What I can also do at this point, because again, there's really no science to this, I can add a brown material. I have my wood shavings, I also have my paper. And the paper is definitely dry, so what we'll do is we'll add a little bit of water to this pile. I recently cut back my dianthus and I ended up with a bunch of green materials. And those are the things that you want to use in your pile. Definitely use your scraps from your own flower beds as well as you're cutting back your perennials and your annuals. And basically, I'm just going to keep on repeating this process using all the materials I have on hand. And Mr. Budget Gardener said he's going to help me as well. We're going to get this done, and then I'll just give you a quick update in the end on what's next after we built the pile. And the pile has been built. Again, it was a lot of just layering, mixing things around, adding water, fluffing things up. So now the pile should be able to breathe, and the goal is that the temperature should increase. What we're going to do next is we're going to cover this with a black plastic. I like to do that. I feel like it insulates and keeps the heat in. It also keeps the water in, which is a good thing. And then I'm going to put a thermometer so I can watch the temperature and just monitor it. And you can see as we pan this way that everything has been cleaned out of the previous bins that were here. Which, you know what that means. I can even build a new pile if I want to, but that's for another day. Okay, so the compost pile has been covered. It is ready to start cooking. Last thing to do is I'm going to insert thermometers. I happen to have two of them. They are by Rio Temp, and I got these off of Amazon. They're perfect, and again, the temperature that we want to get into is near 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the optimal temperature to get things cooking, to kill off any weed seeds and pathogens. I'll check back in a few days, and I'll let you know how things are going. And let the cooking begin. A few days have passed, and I just wanted to show you what the temperature of the compost pile is at right now. I have two thermometers, and the thermometer that's down near the bottom of the pile is almost at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see we want to get up in the gray area, the hot area, somewhere near 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I have another thermometer near the top of the pile, and that's also sitting at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm very happy with the temperature that we're at right now, but I want it to get hotter than this. So I'm going to wait a few more days, maybe even a week, and I'm going to see what happens. If the temperature is not rising, I'm going to take off the tarp and I'm going to add some more green material to this pile. And I think that's what's needed, is a little bit more greens. And I'll just use my grass clippings the next time I mow. Because as I was mixing the pile, I noticed that there were a lot of brown materials, and I probably would need to add some more greens to lift up that temperature. And that's the beauty of composting, is using our own materials from our own yard, from our own house, and basically making black gold. I made this video hopefully to inspire you to try to make your own compost pile, because I think when it comes to composting, a lot of people feel intimidated that it's too hard to do. There's really, like I said, there's no right or wrong. You can have a compost pile that you've built that just sits there, and eventually it will break down. You might not want to go through all that effort of mixing the piles. You might just want to keep adding to the pile. Eventually you will get the black gold. And the best feeling is seeing all the worms in your pile. Let me tell you, when I was mixing this pile, there were a ton of worms in there. There is a lot of life, which is super exciting. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.